G'day everyone and welcome to the Trekzone Spotlight. Matt Miller with you, and joining me in Los Angeles once again is Larry Nemecek, Dr. Trek himself. Larry, thanks so much for your time.
Of course, Matt. Good to see you again.
Now, little birdie tells me you've got a project coming up on the Roddenberry podcast very soon.
It's a big bird. It's the great bird and his offspring. No, yes. So the Trek Files. I'm very proud of this. It's for Roddenberry. Rod Roddenberry came to me and John Champion, who does the Mission Log podcast, and they've donated a lot of Gene's papers to the UCLA library over the years, a lot of his scripts and all. But there's a lot more that they haven't. And in that process, they found all kinds of things that would be really cool for fans to know, for historians to know, media people. And part of the process of getting into that is doing a podcast, an idea where basically every week we have a 15-minute short podcast called the Trek Files. And we make available not only the podcast, me and a guest talking about this document, like the document of the week, in context and what it meant at the time and what it means today, maybe. But also we put the document online so people can scan it and they can download it and see it at the same time we're talking about it. So it's really cool. It's memos, production memos, letters, drafts, papers with notes in the margin. We're looking at we're holding and scanning original paper with Gene's writing on it, and some things are written to Gene, some are from him. But it's really fascinating, and we found some amazing things that I can't wait to share with Trekland out there.
It sounds absolutely fantastic, and for diehard Trekkies to see exactly what dare I say our creator was thinking when he created the show.
Yes, V'ger wants to see the creator. Yeah, and the other part of the equation. So I was really honored when Rod asked me to do this. They had the idea and they came to me to do it. The thing that was a thrill to me, that was satisfying to me, was years ago when the podcast boom started. I debated whether I should do my own. And I had a couple of ideas, but there were so many good podcasts. There's so many podcasts, period, and there's a lot of good ones out there, Trek podcasts, and sci-fi geek, genre things, that I just didn't want to do more of the same. I wanted to, I had a couple of ideas, and until I could do my own thing and take it to maybe a higher plateau, I was happy to go and guest on other podcasts and talk to other people around the world. And that was what was gratifying here, was that this was something I considered a step above. And it's not the same-o, same-o. And part of that's because it's Rod opening up the family, the file drawers, basically, to us to go and talk about. Now, some of the documents are known. Our pilot show, our premiere show on the 23rd episode, is a document that, if you're not familiar with this and you call yourself a Star Trek fan, you need to just rip the label off right now. But we take it in a new light, and we look at it in a modern light, and also a foundational light. Rod wanted us to start with a couple of touchstones that all Star Trek, no matter the era, touchstones that it's going to say Star Trek on the label. This is what the DNA is. So that's one that's been out there. But after that, we get into some really fascinating things. We have one document that blew me away because it speaks right to the pilot of Discovery, verbatim, from the 80s. And we have another document that's going to make history, going to make headlines. I was basically knocked away from my chair. I fell off my chair when we found it. I had no idea it existed. I could see where it existed. And I can't wait to share that. That's 4 or 5 in. And the other cool thing about the Trek Files is we have guests, too.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And as you say, it's starting on January 23 over on the Roddenberry Network, which is cool. And as you said, it is fantastic that Rod's opening up the family and us Trekkies can really see what Gene's thoughts were through the original series, which is very much still in the mindset of fans at the moment, especially those that aren't liking Discovery, because a common response that I'm hearing is that it's not Gene's Star Trek. What do you think of that?
Wow. Well, let me add to one thing we were talking about just now. This is not just the Trek Files. is located over on its Facebook page as the hub. So the podcast.roddenberry.com is about downloading, but when you can download the episodes and also the document and comment afterwards, it's all very simple. It's on Facebook at the Trek Files, so that's easy. But the other aspect here is it's not just the 60s. We have his 70s and 80s papers. We're going to be talking about all those movie projects that happened and didn't happen and the iterations back and forth, and all the years leading up to the Next Generation evolution. And a lot of things that were just in fandom in general, and letters with other celebrities, and a lot of cool stuff from the 70s and 80s that tell you more about Gene and the different phases of his life, as well as what state Star Trek was in at the moment, and what all of that speaks to today, which is apropos of what you're saying. You know, famously, the Star Trek that I keep finding myself going back to is the original series and DS9 when we're talking about Discovery. And during DS9, the last few years, now they're the hallowed serial war shows, right? And they're the harbinger of future TV, and how DS9 was ahead of its time and holds up the best among all the series now in our current iteration. Although in 10 years we'll see what the pendulum, right, has done to us, to our perspective.
Yeah.
But at the time of DS9's war shows, Majel was still with us, and she was decrying those as not what Gene would have wanted, because Star Trek was not a space battle show. It wasn't a series about war. And, you know, a lot of people have said, well, part of that was because they didn't have the budget. And a lot of the, you know, exhortations against doing war battle stories, space battle stories, in the Bibles and the writers' guides were about they just couldn't afford them. You know, that was going to, you know, building another ship in the pre-CG days in the 60s was just incredible. And they even shied away from that, you know, in Next Generation early on. We just had the face-off scenes, you know, with before CGI made that more feasible and affordable, and on a time budget as well as on a money schedule. So there's been a little bit of revisionism there about, you know, people have said, hey, if Gene had these tools in the 60s, he would have been right there with it. So there's aspects of that argument that I wonder, you know, it's a little bit like here in America arguing about what the founders meant in the Constitution. In one way, we just wish we had a time machine, could go back and ask.
Yes.
But other than that, we're always going to be parsing these things and debating them. But I think it's still the root. It's still the heart and the root and the soul, the futurism, the respect, the diversity. And in that way, some of the documents we'll get into touch on that very nature. You know, what is the core in any era? What is the core of a Star Trek story? So I don't know. I'm game. There's things about Discovery I wish I could tweak, but I haven't had a problem with the storytelling. Although I know a lot of people are upset that it seems so dark and the characters all seem so broken.
I think the biggest thing for me has been that it's still ongoing, and the writers have committed to honouring Star Trek, and all we can really do is sit back and watch as the episodes unfold and take them episode by episode, because that's all we've got to work with.
Yeah, I've been thinking lately that fandom at large, the audience, is still getting used to the idea of the new format of storytelling. That we're not watching episode by episode standalones. This is the closest thing to the DS9 serialized format that we've had, although it'll be more extended. There were no 15 episode arcs on DS9. They run maybe half a season, 12 or 13 at most. So this will outdo that. But it's been since the generation of the new storytelling from Lost forward. And there's a part of me that we watch this week-to-week debate about the latest episode. And we get all up in the air and spend a lot of time talking about the hot crisis of the moment or the hot topic of the moment. When a lot of these issues are answered in the next episode. It's the evolving part of the story, but it's the framework of the 15-chapter long story, right? I wonder when the 15 are done and we see the season as a whole, and we're not in the realm of debating or questioning or wondering about all these little individual pieces, they'll be moot, they'll be answered. When we get to the bottom line and we can see the product, the story as a whole, what will we be talking about? I feel like we were in that space before the premiere started, But a lot of the the online energy has been taken up, the discussion has been taken up with the questions of the moment. And once all that is known, I've just been curious about what the there will be of Discovery. I'm not saying there isn't any, there's plenty. But I can't wait to get to that stage where we're talking about the overall impact of the show and not just caught up in the week to week. Although I'm not trying to be the cranky old guy with the kids on the lawn. That's part of being a fan, right? But I just see so much of our discussion going into dropping the F-bomb or, you know, the current fan theory of the moment. Well, in 2 months, the fan theory of the moment, there may be some outstanding issues. But the fan theory of the moment will all be moot, and we'll be looking at the overall impact of the whole story and all the iterations, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And you almost need to sit down and
I'm just
rewatch
cursed with
the entire
always
thing.
looking at the. I'm always cursed with looking at the. I'm always thinking, well, what about in 5 years? What about in 10 years?
That's right.
That's just my bizarre Trekland outlook, I guess.
Well, it's interesting because Discovery, this season for me, is slowly becoming something that has a rewatch value. In the beginning there it was almost, dare I say, slow to get started in terms of a rewatch value, but now that we're in the meaty part of the season and we're in the mirror universe and we're trying to work out what's going on, I do see myself over the US summer rewatching the entire 15 episodes, binge watching them even, to understand some of the more intricate points that may have been missed. Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the other thing too. It's dawning on me, but I've had this shared with some of the writers that I've talked to. We need to remember about Discovery what an evolution it's had, and we sit here and talk about 15 episodes and how fast the story has taken hold and settled, and how, you know, we laugh about how no Star Trek, aside from the original series, it took 3 years to get to where it finally got to, right? That they all needed a shakedown cruise for a couple of years. Well, Discovery is really the same way. Discovery is really a compressed 7-year show in 15 episodes, if you think about it. I mean, and part of that's because the evolution of showrunners. We started with Brian Fuller, the people he brought in. They were all allowed to stay when Brian left, which that's a shift there, even though everybody pledged to keep up with his format, his arc for the show initially. And then the people he had were there, but one by one as they left for different commitments, new writers were hired in and new showrunners. So Aaron Harberts and Gretchen Berg eventually replaced people. So it's almost like this show has had the 2-episode pilot prologue, which was an intentional goal, and then the restart with episode 3, which is almost a second pilot. Even that was a episode 3, 4, 5 transition with the overlap of the original writing staff and the newer writers coming in. And it wasn't until 6, 7, 8 that the current staff even fully had the steering wheel, right, for where they were going. We're fully at the helm. And what we've wound up with here is a 7-year show on Discovery years. It's almost like, episodes will be years, Lieutenant. So yeah, there's a compressed Discovery effect there that I think we've basically seen that famous Star Trek evolution. It's just been compressed in a tiny, modern streaming fashion. If you think about it, people are looking at this like we're watching the 15 episodes of a 26-episode year, and if that had been the case, the show couldn't have survived. But that's part of the reason for the long wind-up. We were also frustrated with how long it was taking to get launched. I know CBS All Access was frustrated at how long it was taking to get launched. But everyone kept their cool, kept their patience. The money invested at the beginning wasn't thrown out the window. They dealt and they built upon the foundations that everyone came into. But I think from here on out and in the second season, we'll see more. It couldn't help but be that way, right?
Yeah. Well, and
when you're not changing the driver, you're going to get there faster.
That's right. That's right. When you keep pulling over on the side of the highway to change drivers, it's always going to take a long time. I think the biggest thing that people
and the ride will seem more, more intact, more the same. You won't feel
much smoother
bumps in the road. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've found is that people seem to be missing the fact that no Star Trek series has ever had a fantastic launched out of the blocks first season. There's always been some niggles and some challenges and things that'll work out that they do, and usually it's by the third season of a Star Trek series. I think by the fourth season of Enterprise they really found their stride, unfortunately. But it's interesting that you gave that analogy there of episodes as years, because that makes a lot of sense, and it's exactly what we're seeing in Discovery's first season, that it is stabilising and it's become its own thing. I wonder whether it's the writers and the showrunners were trying to find an identity for their show, given how much hype there was, 12 years off air, and how do you come back from that? How do you come back from that with meeting everyone's expectations? And I don't think you can. I think they've done a bang-up job for what they've been working with.
Right. Well, I mean, that's hard anyway. That's difficult at all. It's difficult. There are so many moving parts to a Star Trek, the original series, and then coming back after 20 years for the Next Generation. And then after that, you know, a movie, starting up movies, and coming back to the J.J. Kelvin movies. There's so many moving parts to a Star Trek and so many expectations. You're so in the spotlight that you've got to carry all that. And it just takes a while, the complexity of the show, it just takes a while to get going. Now, then, as I said, add in the fact that you had a change in, you know, things that might have blown up any other project. There's all the pressure on Star Trek, but also all the pedigree. So no one's going to abandon the project. They're launching a whole new streaming service on its back. So that's in the spotlight. That added a whole new set of stakes to the equation, right? They couldn't be seen that their new service was going to blow up on its flagship series. So all of that required patience. I mean, fans get caught up thinking this is all about us, right? But there were a lot of levels going on here. And the fact that people, you know, stayed with it, stuck to their guns, and landed this thing, it speaks volumes about the patience behind it. And again, the people who are on, you know, the staff now landed it. And I think from here on out, we'll see a more unified tone. The tone that we've seen the last 2 or 3 weeks, and people say, oh, the show is finding its groove now. Well, that was going to happen anyway. It takes a while. Yeah. But my God, they had a lot of hoops to jump through to get here with the crew that are now in charge. But yes, I think Discovery, we're always going to, I hark back to Sarek, and so I want to say measure that in Discovery years.
Mm. Well,
like
Larry, we're
years,
frustrating it.
Different.
Well, Ponfar's every 7 years, so you know.
Yeah.
Larry, we're frustrating out of time, but I just wanted to ask you very quickly, what's been your biggest gripe with Discovery?
I'm sorry, my biggest.
Your biggest frustration, your biggest gripe.
Oh. Well, it's something I couldn't do anything about. I'm still wondering about the Prime universe as far as visual look. I totally understand the need for designers and creatives up and down the line to put their own stamp on a product. And I certainly understand the argument about we can't make this look like it's 1964. You know, the whole issue of this is 10 years before the Cage and Kirk's first voyage. But I still draw the line between design and cinematography. And I'm waiting to see what happens. Of course, this whole aspect with Mirror Universe and hopping through, you know, Mirror Universe and Prime and Mirror Adjacent and Prime Adjacent. I mean, you know, all the hoops that are out there with the quantum universe theory, parallel universes, to see where this winds up. The producers have all promised that things are going to ease closer to the Kirk look. And again, I don't care how you shoot it. There's the design lines, and then there's how you light it and edit it and frame it. So we'll see. That's that and Hollow Viewers. But I'm not letting that get in my way. I love seeing the Andorians and Tellarites in this last episode. So I think the current staff are gradually, you know, steering the ship the way they want to go. So we'll see. We'll see. I have a lot of faith in this staff. There's a lot of fanboys and fangirls on this staff. So we will see. They were handed a built house and told to redecorate. So we'll see what they do when they get a chance to add on.
That's a fantastic analogy, Larry, and I think that's where we're going to leave this chat. Thank you so much for joining me, and good luck with the Trek Files.
Thank you, thank you. We start January 23rd, and I hope everybody out there treks well.